look, like so many obsessive nerds rather, Dom Romeo is a perpetual man-child. And he just hasn't really quite worked out how to really harness and monetize his Rain Man-esque skills. So actually in between kind of bouts of very, very successful actually media and broadcasting, he is actually day-to-day a very overeducated, overqualified shop assistant. They're the best though, they're the best. So look, he's got so many accolades. He's won different awards for his blogs and for his podcasts in comedy and music. He's pretty much a stalwart on the comedy scene. And I could kind of reel off a list of all the things that he's been involved in. It's pretty amazing. He's contributed to the Melbourne Comedy Festival. He's had at least 2 shows there. He's a judge on the comedy scene. He is a manic record collector, and that's obviously the subject of today's talk. I think he got his first 7-inch single, the Beatles movie medley, in 1982, and his most recent one was, at least as far as I know, his last one was the 40th anniversary reissue of David Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. So I think that's pretty much enough to say that he's a genuine nerd. That definitely established it for me. So let's welcome Dom Romeo. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Justine. I am a proper nerd. I am a Rain Man, but not the sort that wins at blackjack, just the sort that catalogues vinyl and other stuff. My first record was the Beatles movie medley. Let me just say up front, don't read all the text. That's just me being manic. Just look at the pictures and listen to me. Beatles movie medley 1982, not in a picture cover, but in a generic EMI red cover, which was the one for 1982. There are collectors who will only have their records in the proper generic covers of the time. They get a bit antsy if they're in the wrong ones. I do a little bit, but I'm not like the full-on hardcore nerds who can look at a record and tell you which pressing plant it came out of. I can't do that. I mean, obviously it's Australian, so there's not much choice. But in America, there's 4 major pressing plants for Beatles records. They'll know whether it's Scranton or Jacksonville or other places that just sound like hillbilly redneck villages that you don't want to visit. This generic cover, though, is my favourite. This is a Rolling Stones Records generic cover. It's great because it's die-cut. It's an odd shape. It would have been expensive to make. It's got the scalloped edges at the top. The circle in the middle isn't a circle and it's not centred. It would have cost a bit, and it's a play on their tongue and lips design. I really like it. I also like the fact that when they launched their own label, Atlantic, which was the major distributor they went with, let them put their own prefix in front of their albums. So on record, the prefix was COC, cock, and on cassette it was CUN, join the dots. Eventually, I did get the Beatles movie medley in a picture cover twice, the Australian one on your left, black and white cover, and the British one in a beautiful picture cover. It was actually released to promote an album, as all singles are. The album was Beatles Real Music, which was a compilation. I feel like the Rain Man, about $100. But it was really important to me. It was the beginning of a journey buying vinyl. And I think that if you've never bought a record, you're missing out. If the only music you get is downloaded, you'll never know the true pleasure of the smell of a fresh cover or of the polyvinyl chloride that's probably slowly poisoning you. But then what isn't in this day and age? These singles aren't actually singles, they're EPs. It's the same one twice, but there are 2 different covers. There's a die-cut one with a hole in the middle and the one that isn't. This is probably the only Beatles single in Australia that doesn't have a black and white cover. The black and white covers were issued in 1982 to commemorate their 20th anniversary. I feel like the Rain Man again, about $100. They all have pictures from the Australian tour in 1964. That's why it's special. Let's move on. David Bowie at this stage, Ashes to Ashes, he proudly sang that about Major Tom from his early days, but the character he embodied on the cover was an even earlier character, the Pierrot clown from Commedia dell'arte. And the beauty of this cover was that in different regions it had a slightly different image on the front. Why is that important? It's not, but if you're a collector, it's really hard to get them all. And if you try, you discover, unfortunately, that the Australian one is the same as the British one and the French one. The American one's different. You never remember which is which, and so you'll find another one somewhere, and you won't know if you have it or not, so you've already bought it. And then you're writing a speech like this at a night like this, and you go, fuck, I've got 4, but I've only got 2. Damn it. Elvis Costello's a favourite of mine. In fact, all the examples I give you are going to be boring and daggy because they're my best loves. This year's model's an excellent album. The cover on the left is the British cover, which is the nicer cover, even though he's on the verge of giving you duck lips. Quite frankly, the one on the right, the American cover, is just a bit silly hiding behind the camera. Why would you do that? Why would you even choose that? Who knows? The Who Sells Out is an excellent album too. This is the album where they decided to basically set the album up like a pirate radio station. So there are jingles advertising products. Pete Townsend's got deodorant. Roger Daltrey's in a bathtub of beans. Keith Moon's getting rid of a zit with Medac. And John Entwistle is trying to win women by strengthening his muscles. Since this is a Nerd Night, I'll point out that the back cover, the last 2 pictures, are actually taken from a CD. And if you can see the spine from where you're sitting, the O in the Who is not an O, it's a 0. That's nerd. What's really special about this album is the first Australian pressing was different to the rest of the world. Instead of Medac, Keith Moon used Clearasil, as good Australians do when dealing with zits. It's worth a bit more. I don't know how much more. Doesn't matter. Cream, I don't know if you're familiar with Cream. They were a trio that consisted of Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce. They were together for about 2 years but produced so many albums. Why this album's special? One of the reasons is it's designed by Martin Sharp, who's an Australian pop artist. He was living in London at the time as part of the editors of Oz magazine. He didn't shack up. He shared a flat with Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton shacked up with George Harrison's wife. Whole other story. You'll notice that the album on the left, your left, not my left, has a squiggle at the top. It's actually Martin Sharp's signature. Don't worry, nothing. It just happened. I don't know, whatever. The original album had the silver cover. It was a double album, but then it was split in 2, and the silver became the studio album, and the gold became the live album. Except then they changed, and I had to buy both anyway because I'm a nerd. But then I found an even better version of it where they put the back cover art on the front and printed it in negative. I don't know why I needed to own it. I just feel better that I own it. Back to the Beatles. This is the first album I ever owned, full-length double album. It's the Beatles 1967 to 1970. Great compilation. What I've got here, and I'm going to look at the screen for a little bit, what I've got here are 2 different pressings. The one on top is Australian, the one underneath is not Australian, and they've substituted a few songs. If you look carefully, you'll see that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the great song about LSD, has been replaced with something less offensive. It's She's Leaving Home. And A Day in the Life, in which John Lennon wants to turn you on, has been replaced with When I'm 64. The reason why these replacements have taken place is this pressing is in fact from Korea. And it's been, again, you can't see the detail there, but if I read it to you, approved by Korean authorities. This is okay. Our people can listen to this. We've taken off the drug references. We've taken off the revolutionary songs. We've gotten rid of the little stab at the USSR because, you know, we like other communists. Again, I don't know why I need both versions. I just know I do. And when you download this stuff, it's not the same. You know, you can't get cover variations on downloads. You can't get song variations on downloads. I was going to talk to you more about the Beatles, but I think I'm going to be flogging a dead horse there. There's a lot to say. What was important about Sgt. Pepper? I mean, Paul was dead. We won't go into that story. That'll take too long. But the detail in the cover was something that other bands tried to replicate. The Rolling Stones had their psychedelic album, their Satanic Majesty's Request. If you look carefully at the cover, and I've helped you out here by going into detail, it's very hard to see, but those arrows are pointing at reduced Beatles heads that have been hidden in the artwork. They're the heads taken from... Can you see them? Can anyone see them? They're taken from the inner sleeve of Sgt. Pepper. The reason this is important is because after this, someone decided that on Bob Dylan's John Wesley Harding, at the tree behind Dylan, just where the tree hits the rim of the photograph, and there's a little bit of contrast, if you turn the record upside down, you can see faces. Now, can you see faces? I'm not sure that I can see faces, but a reviewer at the time pointed out that if you hold the album with the cover facing upward and rotate it clockwise, the record falls on the floor. My favourite pastiche of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper is Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention's We're Only in It for the Money. I think parody is an important thing in popular culture. And again, if you're only downloading your music, how do you get to enjoy that? You don't. You need to come to places like this and hear people like me bang on about it. Another great parody, the Kiss album, parodied by Norman Gunston, a single called Kiss Army. It's got a bit of blackface. We don't feel too good about that. But what I love most is where he's bleeding from a shaving cut. He's bleeding onto himself just below. Oh, very funny. Thanks, Norman. This Beatles bootleg. Now, bootlegs, you can download bootlegs, but you don't get to enjoy the way bootleggers fuck around with the oeuvre of an established artist. This is a Beatles bootleg, but look what they've gone and done. They've cut off the mop tops and gave them crew cuts. Kind of funny, doesn't matter. They've gone so far as to replicate the Parlophone label and even put a Parlophone number on it, beginning with an R. Unfortunately, that's a single number. This is a 12-inch single. It should begin with 12R. You're not going to know the difference. Good thing I'm here. The other thing that you can do with real solid actual artifacts, which I love, is you can have promo copies, rare things. There's no promo copies with downloads. This is important to me because I grew up at a time when you could still own the artifact. If you have a download, what do you have? You don't have anything. It's out there in the ether. You can't trade it. You can't swap it. And it gets me angry because when I worked in music shops, I was the dude where if a customer came in and said, I need the album with Roger Waters and Eric Clapton, I could say, you need the pros and cons of hitchhiking. Now there's an app for that. There's an app for old people like me. I no longer need to be here. In fact, next time this happens, there'll probably be an app doing the Rain Man gags. The other thing you can't get on a download is coloured vinyl. How gorgeous is coloured vinyl? The Doug Anthony All-Stars song Bottle on bottle green vinyl. Picture discs, shaped picture discs. The Rolling Stones' tongue, it's a beautiful thing to have. Don't get caught up reading the text. I'll basically summarise it for you. Towards the end of the 90s, end of the 80s and into the 90s, well, let me start from the beginning. Singles exist to promote albums. So for a while, record companies thought we can exploit our customers better if we release a lot of singles and customers have to buy them all. So there'd be the 7-inch single, there'd be the second 7-inch single with a different flip side, there'd be the 12-inch single, there'd be the picture disc of the 7-inch and the 12-inch, and there'd be the shaped picture disc. And unfortunately, sometimes people like me needed to have all of them. At my school, it was known as doing a Dom. If the new single came out, my mates would go, I've done the Dom, I've gotten all of them. Cool. The move away from artifacts and into downloads is not too different from exploiting the buyer by having all the different formats. It's reducing overheads, but it's nowhere near as much fun. I mean, seriously, what can you show your mates? What can you swap? All you can do is trade files. Where's the fun in that? There are also shaped picture discs in CDs. I don't know if you knew about that. That's a brain-shaped picture disc. It's Green Day's Brain Stew. This is one of my favourite CD singles ever. It's Tism's Australia, the Lucky Cunt. Now, the artwork is a piss take of Ken Doan. I've never been a Ken Doan fan. Is anyone a Ken Doan fan? I can't condone Ken Doan fans. I can't do it. My problem with it is, to me, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone by saying this, to me it looks like primitive peoples on LSD. You know when they spit on their hands and do cave paintings? Only it's psychedelic. I'm not into it. Neither was Ken Doan when it was put on the cover. He sued them, so it was replaced with censored due to legal advice. That's Sinead O'Connor ripping up, originally she was ripping up the picture of the Pope, not the current Nazi Pope, the previous Jewish Pope. She got into a lot of trouble over that, so TISM basically had her ripping up the old cover, but had to censor the old cover, so they censor the old cover by having her ripping up the censored old cover. Very pomo, which is kind of fitting because this is a nerd night. Now, this is my absolute favourite song ever. Not my favourite song, it's a shit song, it's my favourite single. It's my favourite record I've ever owned. It's by a horrible old man who can't sing and he's ugly as fuck. And it's not Bob Dylan, and it's not Leonard Cohen, and it's not me. It's actually John Lennon's dad, Freddie Lennon. I love this because John Lennon's dad appeared out of nowhere after neglecting his son for years and made a record. It's shit. I will never listen to it again, but I love the fact that I own it. The other thing I love about it is if you look at Freddie Lennon, I don't care what you say or what you think. If John Lennon was alive now, that's what he'd look like. Look at him. It's him. My other favourite recording, this is probably my favourite package of all time. It's a 4 CD set. It's a reissue of Frank Zappa's first album, Freak Out. It's reissued as the MoFo Project Object. MoFo stands for Making of Freak Out. So it's the album, plus lots of bonus outtakes and alternative versions and different mixes. The reason I love it is because fans were allowed to contribute to its manufacture. If you pre-ordered and prepaid for it, you got your name somewhere in the booklet. Now, I know you're thinking my name has to be there. Where is it? Do you want me to show you? I think it's there. You're peeking too early. When I show this to people, they go, yes, you are truly the greatest nerd, and it's kind of an insult until I show them who I'm sharing the space with. Oh, yeah. I am fulfilled. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you how to win blackjack, but I can tell you a lot about music. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dom. That was wonderful.